Hey guys, it's Stephanie, and again, it has been a long time since I've filmed a video. I was planning on doing a bunch of Halfoween stuff, and of course, I got so sick that I couldn't talk. It was pretty bad, so I am sorry for dropping the ball on that. Halfoween, I think all in all was a success. I did end up reading the 3 books I wanted to read, although technically I think I finished one of the books after Halfoweenathon dates technically, but I did end up within this month reading all 3 books. So that week was crazy. There was just a lot of traveling, and my husband graduated, so it was just families came into town, just a lot of stuff going on. But I did end up getting that reading done. So I feel like I have so much stuff to cover. I'm really gonna try to do it all in one video because I feel like throughout my day I only have so much filming time that it takes so much more effort for me to do separate videos for everything that I'm really just gonna try to talk about everything right now. And I am so behind on tags that I want to do, so it's just a lot. This is what happens when you don't film consistently. It all just, I don't know what this is. It piles up. So I had 2 DNFs this month. I would say like DNFing things is not something I struggle with. I am very quick to DNF. There was something, it was a little harder with these. I would say I read substantial chunks of these books before I decided to put them down. Unfortunately for me, the first one was Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn and Waugh. I had wanted to read this for a long time. I had it in my head that this was a book that I would enjoy. People consider it a modern classic. Reading the synopsis, I felt like it had this Great Gatsby vibe. Stay with me here. Because of the character, Charles Ryder, who's kind of our perspective character, having this like very wealthy friend, and he kind of tags along. He's kind of like the normal person that is invited into this like higher society. So I felt like it had like that kind of a Gatsby-esque vibe to it. And the friendship with these 2 men, and this takes place between World War I and World War II, and it's kind of a, I don't know if it's necessarily the nostalgia for, I don't know if it's Edwardian, but that like a Downton Abbey-esque, like old money, giant estate, leisurely type of life that Sebastian and his family live at Brideshead. And Catholicism plays a big part in it. Sebastian's family is Catholic in a way that you feel like Charles, the protagonist, thinks it's not necessarily exotic, but it's like such a strange thing, and he's taking in like all their customs and really looking at like, oh, like they, you know, they take like the holy water and they pray to saints, and like, oh, it's so different. And I don't know how I felt about it. I got 3/4 of the way through this. This is my second time trying to read this book. I could not get into this. I realized 3/4 of the way through this book that I really didn't care about anyone. I don't know, I didn't connect with it. And at 3/4 of the way through, I realized I don't care about any of these characters. Like I said, this is my second time trying to read this book. I tried to read it in this version. I figured the second time maybe I would try the audiobook. It's narrated by Jeremy Irons, who does a fantastic job. This is not his fault. I know he starred in the miniseries from the 80s, I think. I just was not interested in this story in the least. And I Wikipedia'd the synopsis after I decided to DNF it, and I don't feel like I missed anything, unfortunately. So I'm sorry. Please let me know if like you love Brideshead Revisited and I made a huge mistake. Not that that'll change my mind. I don't think I'm gonna pick this up. My next one is also one I was pretty sad about. That is Only the Dead Know Burbank by Bradford Tatum. This one was a difficult DNF too because I was doing this as a buddy read with Sean at Eclectic Reads. And because I love this cover. This was a cover buy that I got on a book outlet. Now I will be more careful with that. My issue with this book is I think the story that I wanted this book to tell versus the story that the author wanted to tell were 2 different things. Reading the synopsis, this is about a young girl who becomes a vampire, basically, in Europe, and then she comes to Hollywood during the Depression and like the golden age of Hollywood and, you know, universal horror, and really rises up the ranks in Hollywood and becomes this big influence in horror movies with like Dracula and Frankenstein, and, you know, is a big influence in this. And it's because she's a vampire, so she has all this insight into this dark world and the unknown and real life horror. And so what I wanted the story to focus on was the golden age of Hollywood and her meeting like Bela Lugosi. Like, there's a lot of that in here, supposedly. I made it about 150 pages into this 380 page book, and she was still in Europe. And I think I wanted her to become a vampire right away, and then and then we see her working in film. What the author wanted to do was spend over 100 pages with her backstory and like what were the events that collided and her relationship with her mother and all of these things that I didn't care about. So it just moved too slow. The writing I did not get along with. I found it confusing at times. Like, I didn't know what was happening. And yeah, I just didn't get along with this. Like, this was a book I was dreading to pick up. And that's how I know it's time to DNF a book. When I look through Goodreads on my currently reading and I think, that book, I should read a chapter in it. Like, if I am feeling that way about a book, it's time to drop it. So unfortunately, that's that for this. So now for the books I read during Halfoweenathon, which was like the end of April into May. So I read / listened to Geralds Game by Stephen King and watched the movie. That was one of the prompts, was like, read a horror book, watch a movie, also one by like a master of horror, so Stephen King plus an adaptation. I remember years ago I had this coworker who told me she was reading this book, and when she explained to me what the synopsis was, I thought, that sounds stupid. So I don't know that I thought I would ever read this book, because in my mind I thought it sounded dumb and it would not be something I would enjoy. Which, like, with some introspection, looking into what I enjoy, I don't know why I thought that. So if you don't know, this is about a woman named Jessie. Her and her husband are taking a romantic weekend at their cabin. They've recently gotten into some stuff to spice up their marriage, their love life. And so she is handcuffed to the bed and they are role-playing. Things start to get a little out of hand, and Jessie's husband suffers a heart attack and dies, leaving Jessie handcuffed to this bed in this secluded cabin where no one can hear her scream. And she is trying to get out of this situation. While she is in this situation, she starts hallucinating, and in the book she sees two different beings. She hears two different voices. One of them is a friend from college who she considered, like, you know, a strong, like, feminist, and then the other one is I think she calls her like the good wife, but she's more like this a meek conservative voice. And so, like, these two voices go back and forth, and I mean, they're her, but they argue and they give her advice and try to help her get out of the situation, but also help her deal with this traumatic experience that happened when she was 11 that she's been trying to suppress. I will say trigger warnings for child molestation and basically about her confronting all of these things in this book. So I didn't know how I would like this book because it's basically a one-person novel. Like, she has flashbacks to the traumatic event and she starts putting things in context and talking to these voices, which are her. I loved this book. Like, this is on like my favorites list of Stephen King now. It's very psychological, very character driven. It's obviously about all this internal conflict. I loved the way it was done. There were parts of it that made me squirm, both in the book and the movie. I just really enjoyed this. This was definitely a book that I loved. My only complaint was the ending. I thought it went a little further than it had to. Like, if it would have ended earlier, I would have been fine with it. Anyway, so that was Gerald's Game. That was one of the books I read. I also read Coyote Songs by Gabino Iglesias. This was not a novel, because this is like interconnected short stories. It's a mosaic novel, but this was nominated for a Bram Stoker this year for a short story award. I also really enjoyed this book. So these are 5 stories that keep popping up. Like, we keep revisiting these different stories. These are like 5 different threads that we are following throughout the story, if that makes sense. These all take place at the border or the frontera. There's a lot of Spanish words in here. I can read Spanish, so that wasn't like a big thing to me, but reading reviews from people who don't speak Spanish, a lot of people said, you know, like, it wasn't a big deal, or like they felt like with context they understood what was happening. It wasn't something that was like, what? But I also felt like it was so immersive, and it helped these characters feel so real. I'll say, if I could describe this book, I would say this is like gritty and raw, but also beautiful. This is not a book that is holding back at all. It's obviously very charged, very political. I don't know that you would read like a pulpy book about issues at the border and think it's not going to be political, but it is. It's this pulpy story, you know. There's a lot of violence, but what I loved about it is that it has supernatural elements, which I love. I love when there's like this gritty and really rough subject matter, but there's also like monsters and like spirits and stuff like that. I just really enjoyed it. I just thought it was beautifully written too. So I really enjoyed this. I definitely recommend it. This is Coyote Songs by Gabino Iglesias. And then the third book I read was Halloween Fiend by C.V. Hunt, and this is about a small town that is tormented by this monster called Halloween. And we are just following one man as he kind of agitates the monster on accident, and things start to escalate from there. It's a very short novel, so I don't want to give too much away, but if that sounds interesting to you, I would definitely recommend it. This is a really good read for the Halloween season 2. So if you want something atmospheric with like a small town to get you in the mood for Halloween around October, this is one I would recommend. That is Halloween Fiend by C.V. Hunt. Okay, and then for a buzzy book that I read Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo last year. I really enjoyed it. This, I don't know, it didn't land with me as much. And I've seen like a ton of people giving this 5 stars, and I wish it would have resonated with me as much as it's resonating with a lot of other people, but it's just not. And part of it at the beginning was I really didn't care for the Daisy Jones character. I have this pet peeve, and I'm sure like maybe some of you do too. I'm not going to be like, maybe it's just me, but I don't like to be told that a character is something. I like to be shown that a character is something, and that just seems so petty. But we're just constantly told that Daisy Jones is cool. And I just felt like that was very shorthanded. Like, I am the reader, I'm just supposed to buy that this girl is cool. And it felt forced to me. And so I just had a hard time moving past that, I think, at the beginning. Throughout the novel, I warmed up to her as a character a little more, but at the beginning, I was definitely fighting against that. It was something that, I don't know, rubbed me the wrong way at first. I listened to this as an audiobook, which I would recommend. It had a full cast narration. It was a great production. And I thought everyone did a really good job in it. I didn't care for the ending. I thought the twist was unnecessary. I don't think it really added anything to the story. And yeah, the ending, I didn't love the implications of it at all. So if you've read it, maybe you know what I mean. I would say one of my favorite parts of the story was the different perspectives and how sometimes people would just say things as fact, and then another person would come in and talk about the same thing but say a different thing. So everyone's version is so true in their own minds, and it's just like, I loved that about memory and how people remember things different. People have different viewpoints talking about the same event. It was a 3-star book for me. So that's Daisy Jones and the Six. I also read Much Ado About Mean Girls by Doescher. This was sent to me by Quirk, and I am so happy they sent me this book. This was a ton of fun. I am not smart enough to tell you any kind of like Shakespearean analysis of this. I have read like 3 Shakespeare plays in my life, and 2 of them were for school. So I don't know that I can really come up here and be like, the iambic pentameter, like paired with this cult classic, really did whatever. Like, this was just a really fun way to spend a few days reading this new interpretation of Mean Girls. Like, I thought it was really funny to see like these iconic scenes and iconic lines that I was looking for translated into this new format and new language. So I really enjoyed it. If it sounds enjoyable, if it sounds like something you would like, if you loved Mean Girls, I would definitely check this out. So this is William Shakespeare's Much Ado About Mean Girls by Doescher. He's done like a lot of stuff like this. Like, I know he did a lot of like the Star Wars movies like this, and he also has Back to the Future coming out in a Shakespearean play form. I think it's going to be called Get Thee Back to the Future. So again, be on the lookout for that. Now for books that I am currently reading or I am planning on reading. So currently reading The Family Plot by Cherie for the Books in the Freezer book club. I am not far into it at all. About 100 pages into House of Skin by Jonathan Janz. So I've mentioned before, a lot of people are doing like hashtag Year of Janz. All of his backlist titles are coming out through his new publisher, Flame Tree Press. This is his debut novel, House of Skin, which is about a man who inherits a house from a great uncle he never really knew or talked to, but the house has some dark secrets. And he moves into this town and everyone hates him because they hated his great uncle, and so he like learns what a horrible person he was and all of the horrible things he did. That's where I am right now. But that is House of Skin by Jonathan Janz. Rachel from the Shades of Orange and I are going to start Kill River 2. This is by Cameron Roubique. I read Kill River last year. It's a slasher story that takes place at a abandoned water park, and it was loads of fun. So now that it's warming up, Rachel and I wanted to dive into the sequel. And then I know she already read his new book, Golf Curse, but I want to pick up Golf Curse after I read this one. So that is Kill River 2. And then a book that was sent to me by the author was Osgood as Gone by Cooper S. Beckett. And this is about a team that did like a paranormal like ghost hunting show. I guess I'll read it to you. Once Osgood and Frost Once Osgood and Frost were the up-and-coming stars of the burgeoning paranormal investigation TV show craze before a hoax put an end to their friendship, partnership, and television careers. Now, over a decade later, Prudence Osgood is a barely functioning alcoholic ghost hunter for hire. Her yearning for mystery and adventure is reignited when she receives a cryptic, untraceable email. She can't resist embarking on an investigation that tugs threads winding through a sinister series of disappearances. Her former partner's family and a night 20 years ago when a semi blew a yellow light and nearly killed her. So this sounds really good, and a lot of people I follow are loving this, which gets me really excited. So that is Osgood as Gone by Cooper S. Beckett. That was a lot. So those are books I have DNF'd, books I have read recently, and books I am planning to read. Please, if you have any thoughts on any of the like ramblings I had or any of the books that I mentioned in this video, please comment below. Thank you so much for watching this, and I hope you have a great day. See you. Bye.